the latest developments on the Safe Banking Act, Tyler Beuerlein from Hypur joins us to explain more on the Dales Report. All right, we are joined with Tyler Beuerlein, Chief Revenue Officer for Hypur. How are you, sir?
Great, how are you?
So let's get into the business, okay? So, I want to talk to you obviously today. We've heard a lot of challenges right now with US banks and preferences when it comes to obviously dealing with the cannabis industry. And the first thing we'll talk about is Hypur. You're a company that provides payment and technology for high-risk markets. So in this case, cannabis. So I guess my first question is who is Hypur?
Yeah, Hypur is a technology provider that was built by bankers for bankers to solve their challenges when trying to serve any highly regulated industry. So I think what people fail to realize is there are industries that are perfectly legal outside of cannabis that dwarf cannabis from a volume perspective that essentially have had many of the same banking issues as cannabis. So when we launched to the market, 6.5 years ago, we started getting calls from banks and credit unions saying, hey, we would like to explore your technology to bank the state legal cannabis industry. And so head first, we dove into this issue, and fast forward 6.5 years, over half of the banks and credit unions in the US that openly bank this industry to scale use us on the reg tech side to do it. And then that has led to our payment products finally being able to launch nationwide about a year ago. So we understood that from a payment perspective, this is a banking problem, not a payments problem. And if you couldn't solve the banking side of it, the payment mechanism would never work. And so that's why you've seen every iteration of a payment product come out, launch to the market, die, or get shut down. And those things have put the industry at risk far too often. So we've done it right. It's been a huge, heavy lift and a painful process, but we've had a lot of success.
So walk me through, obviously this industry is evolving rapidly. How does it work?
From a Hypur perspective?
Yeah.
Well, think about it from a foundational perspective. We're there to eliminate blind spots, create efficiencies, and enable banks and credit unions to provide a level of transparency to their regulatory bodies that they may not have ever had in another industry, right? So the answer to this problem is ultimate transparency, right? And so that's our foundation. On the payment side, the cannabis industry cannot use credit, debit, any branded card products to date. So we've come up with a very unique product that allows for a consumer to conduct a digital transaction in a very seamless way. The mechanism for that is a direct bank-to-bank transfer. So anytime a consumer walks in, uses Hypur to pay at a dispensary, our bank clients initiate a transfer between the consumer's bank account directly into the merchants. No third-party events.
How does your business model evolve? Let's say, for example, you guys have a big US election coming up. And let's say, there's been a lot of talk about, I don't even want to get into who's going to win the election. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are hopeful that this industry continues to mature and you'll start to see a lot of the big US players uplisted on the US stock exchanges. So with that, and I learned this, that a lot of the banks, it isn't necessarily illegal. It's more based on a preference. So if these companies are then I could be wrong to say that, but and you'll probably have more insight on that. But in the event, let's say it gets legalized federally from a medicinal standpoint, and a lot of the banks start to come in and start financing a lot of these companies. How does your business evolve from that?
Yeah, so great question. And look, there's two things here. One is the SAFE Act. The second one is potential federal legality. And again, going back to highly regulated industries, this will always be a highly regulated industry. And so for any bank or credit union to try and serve the market, they're going to have to build out a robust, dedicated program to do so. You're not going to see the Chases and the Wells Fargos of the world enter these markets. And we know that because if you look at money service businesses, check cashers, payday lenders, cross-border remittance, all of those industries have significant challenges getting banking access despite being legal because the compliance burden on any bank or credit union to try and serve those markets is massive. Right? So those things will help us in the long run. They will help more institutions serve that. But again, more institutions are going to need help to do so. With the SAFE Act, one of the biggest misnomers about that piece of legislation is that if the SAFE Act passes, banking is going to open up to the world and the branded card networks are going to come in and people can use credit cards. I've actually seen merchants send out communication to their member base saying, hey, support the SAFE Act so we can use credit cards. It's not the case.
Really?
Branded card networks are not going to enter this space until federal legality, period.
Really?
The Act does not change federal legality. So that's one of the things that I think the industry needs to understand. This is always going to be somewhat of a heavy lift on the financial services side.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting feedback, because that was my understanding with the Safe Banking Act, is that the banks would allow a lot of this stuff to come in and finance, but from a federal standpoint, as you would probably know, no one really understands as to how that's all going to break down and unfold in the U.S. It would be great, obviously, if you could see that within the next 6 months after an election. But what are you hearing on your end with regards to, this moving on a federal level? Are you hearing anything that maybe the average investor may not be aware of?
I think on the federal level, obviously, I think it's going to be a big issue on both sides.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see the conservative side of the fence get behind it in more of a state regulated market. I think you may see the Democratic side get behind it on just a full legalization perspective. But I think either way, it's still going to be controlled state by state. So even if it's went federally legal tomorrow, you're still going to have a license structure within each state market that's going to dictate how the industry runs.
Let's talk a little bit about your space as well. Who are your competitors and how do you differentiate yourself?
Good question. So we've had a number of competitors come out on the payment side. But again, because we built the foundation we have, at the end of the day, I don't say this boastfully. This is kudos to an amazing team that we have here. We don't have anything that rivals us from that perspective, right? Because we're a completely unique animal. On the payment side, we've seen, again, every iteration of a payment product come out. They all eventually typically fail because they don't understand the problem. Right. And they didn't lay that foundation. So
what are some of those problems you don't think they I guess plan for, that you hear a lot of?
Yeah, correct. Unfortunately, in too many instances, that lack of understanding puts the industry at risk. And we've seen that through, endless litigation, companies going down, owing merchants millions of dollars. There's a case with the Department of Justice right now for fraud. So a delivery provider wanted to offer credit cards to the member base. The only way to do that is by defrauding a bank or credit union and lying to them about the nature of the business. The Department of Justice just got involved, and it's a mess. So we've really tried to educate the industry on not only payment methodologies and why certain things just aren't going to work and they're going to put them at risk. And we've tried to prove that through what we've done in the industry. So for us, now it's a matter of taking market share, continuing to innovate to make that entire process frictionless, whether it be through integration or, like for COVID, we launched a contactless version of Hypur. So if a consumer walks into a dispensary or they get delivery, they can pay digitally and never have to touch a device other than their own.
You guys have been around for 6 years. This industry changes so rapidly on a month-to-month basis. How do you keep up with the pace with things changing so rapidly all the time?
Well, we're really fortunate, and we're fortunate because we see everything from the financial services side out, and those relationships over the years have run deep. So typically, we see data sets, we have information on what's coming months and months ahead of time. And to your point, we always joke that this industry runs in dog years because things do move so quickly. So we've been very fortunate to be able to use those data sets to inform our decision-making process and stay ahead of the game.
Last year, you quoted as saying most digital payments in the cannabis space will use your technology by the end of the year. Saying that, let's fast forward to today. How close are we to that? And what does that hold for the future for Hypur?
Again, I think COVID has sped up that process pretty dramatically. So for us, again, look, we understand that the branded card networks are coming at some point. We've built our technology and our network to accommodate that when it comes. So for us, it's continuing to take market share, continuing to show the industry that there is a sustainable, compliant method of digital transaction, and really to show the industry that by taking a short-sighted approach, not only do you risk, the lawsuits, the legal repercussions, all of those things, but from a consumer perspective, I think what the industry is realizing is the true consumer long term is the fringe consumer that is used to buying on Amazon. They're used to, you know, ordering at home and having it show up at their door. And if you have a payment method that continues to fail or it gets shut down every 3 months, you're losing that consumer base.
For sure you are.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got to rethink, you know, that entire process, and you've got to provide a sustainable long-term option, and we're it.
So where do you see yourself? I know it's tough to say, we say dog years where things are moving so rapidly, but what's your plan? You're set out as things start to materialize more and more in the US, which is, let's face it, the biggest market worldwide, especially in the cannabis industry. Where do you see yourself, say, in 12 months?
Yeah, I think, you know, for us, we're conquering the cannabis space. And that takes time. It's an extremely heavy lift, as you know. And so we're hoping that middle to end of year, we'll be on the majority of counters in this space. You know, through our integration partners, the correct retailers, things of that nature. And then, you know, we have aspirations to move into other high risk industries that need us.
Yeah, you look at sports betting?
Yeah, sports betting, you know, gambling is talking, you know, casinos are talking about going cashless. They're not going to be able to use credit cards. There are a myriad of other industries that need our help. And candidly, you know, our methodology was, look, if we can conquer the most polarizing first, that's an easy transition for us into everything else. And so I think we're finally getting to that point as a company where those things are on the radar. You know, we're evaluating each opportunity, and we're going to attack some of those by the end of the year.
Sounds exciting. Times are changing. New generations creating new ideas, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting. All the best. Appreciate you taking the time, and let's keep in touch.